On this week's episode of I-501C, the podcast for nonprofit board members, you're going to see the guy who's typically behind the scenes, my son, Reed Corley, who's the producer of this podcast of I-501CU. And why am I interviewing Reed today? A number of you have asked questions. Well, how do you do podcasting? Should we do podcasting? And so we thought, what the heck? We'll do a podcast on why and how to podcast. So Reed, welcome. Introduce yourself. Tell the audience a little bit about who you are, your background, how you came to work for your old man, and then we'll get into the interview.
Hey everybody, I'm Reed Corley. I produce videos and podcasts for people and businesses who want to amplify their brand. So do this mostly through podcasting, and I started out podcasting about 2 years ago when Michael told me that he wanted to start a podcast, and the only thing he wanted to do was to talk. So that left me to figure out how to get us to that point, which it's been about 2 years now. We've produced over 100 episodes, and I have a couple other clients. This all led up to me starting my own business, basically producing podcasts and videos for other people. And so now I have a couple clients. I've produced around 300 episodes in total across all my clients.
Oh, that's great. Don't you love how he calls me Michael when we're in a business setting? That's kind of comical. And somebody mentioned that the other day. They thought that was a lot of fun, Reed, when they hear you say that. But anyway, that's okay. And so he's really built this. Going to show you a little bit, you the audience, how he's built the I-501CU podcast and how, it may help some of you all listening. But let's start for a question we get a lot, Reed. And you touched on this in the intro about the branding, the awareness. Why should nonprofits consider podcasting?
It's extremely inexpensive. It is very easy, and it allows you to share your story. So you can do it almost for free. You can learn how to do it in just a couple hours. And like we've heard from so many nonprofits, sharing their story is the hardest part, and it gives you a method to be able to do that.
Oh, well stated. So it's a tool. It's a tool to get your message out in this very cluttered world, especially for nonprofits trying to get your message out in a unique fashion. This may be the way to do it. Now, what's interesting, and you taught me this, so podcasting is kind of the basis for content. We hear all about content creation and being able to repurpose content. So can you talk a little bit about what you do with the I-501CU and your other clients?
Absolutely. So the podcast itself can be viewed as the foundation of the content that gets created, and it gets repurposed in many forms. The main second way it does is with a YouTube video. So this podcast will be posted on all the normal podcasting sites, but it'll also be posted on YouTube as well. Not only that, we will create short form videos from each podcast. So we create 3 short form videos from each podcast, which allows us to post on YouTube, those, and on LinkedIn. And not only that, then we also are able to create text posts on LinkedIn for each podcast as well. So it is a vehicle to create a week's worth of content from one long form podcast.
Yeah, and that's really how we look at it. It's a week's worth of content. So I'll do the interviews. We'll talk a little bit about how we do things. And then we also video these interviews. Like those of you may be watching on video right now. When we started, we didn't do video. And then Reed said, hey, while we were using Zoom back then, why not also use the video, get permission? Now we can create a YouTube channel. I'm like, well, that sounds really good. I don't want to figure it out. And so Reed figured it out. So now we've got the ability of this video and this audio to post and then even take snippets of it. So can you talk a little bit about what a short is and how why you do that?
Yeah, so it is going to be a video that's less than 60 seconds long that grabs a moment from a podcast episode that is able to stand on its own. So it doesn't need the context outside of that short form video, that video. And this is a very popular type of content now. You can think of TikTok started this type of content, but so you can use your short form video and post it. Basically every single social media platform has an avenue for this now. So you can make one short form video and post it to all the platforms without having to change anything about it, which allows you to spread your reach very, very far with one piece of content.
Yeah, and we do that on LinkedIn. That's our platform of choice. We chose that a couple years ago. And so we do that because it gives exposure to our guests and exposure to me, to us. And so people go, wow, you're really posting a lot. But the secret sauce is you've taken that and edited it down, parsed it, and created videos from a bigger video. And likewise, so I'm going to let out a dirty secret to everybody. It says, wow, Michael, you do so much posting on LinkedIn. You're so consistent. Well, the dirty secret is it's not me writing those posts. It's actually Reed doing it. I do edit them, review them, so I know what I'm posting. But for the basis of that content, Reed, you're actually going back to the podcast.
That is right. So we make 2 text posts every single week, which are to introduce the episode to everybody, and then 3 takeaways from that episode. So it's providing value to our audience, and it's something that we already recorded. We are just repurposing it into a text-based format or in an image. So using one piece of content, again, the podcast, to create other pieces of content.
So in this case, one piece results in about 10 pieces, I've heard you say, which is just amazing. And that was at least that wasn't a Michael Corley design. That was a Reed Corley. And remember back, I said, I don't want to do anything except talk. Please figure everything else out. Now, Reed's patient with me because he'll tell me things I need to do, which has been a lot of fun. But it's just, you sit here and go, wow, we amplified that. What, Reed, what do you think? How long does it take us to do all told? And then we're getting a little bit of the specifics. But now you got it down to a science.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it takes me less than an hour to do everything post-production related. It takes us 30 minutes to record the episode, maybe 5 minutes to schedule and send out all the prep information. So what is that? An hour and 35 minutes to make a 20-minute podcast episode and all the social posts?
Yeah, and it's gotten us a little while to get to that point, but we got a rhythm, a system now, and that we all know, everybody listening, once you get a system, things really get to be a little bit efficient. So so everybody goes, wow, we're listening to this podcast, this is awesome. What should people be aware of before they begin podcasting?
It can be very inexpensive, but it also can be very expensive if you decide to go that route. So if you want to rent a studio or build a studio, know that your cost will go up. You can do things completely for free through Zoom, using the mic built into your computer with a free hosting site. So just know that this can get really expensive if you allow it to, but it does not have to be. Consistency is the most difficult part. We chose to go weekly. You do not have to go weekly for your podcast. But that, for us, said every single week we are recording something and posting it. And that was difficult at some times. We had to come up with things on the fly. So consistency is very difficult. I would say those are probably the 2 main things to be aware of.
Yeah, and we had so getting back to the consistency, that's what I read. That's the key. It's even more important than content. I got to be careful saying that, but you don't want to have crummy content. But if you get to the point where I'd rather not say anything, or I got to say something that's maybe at 90% of good, if that's such a thing, then do it. You got the repetition. Plus, you get better the more you do it. Repetition is critical.
Yep, you need your audience to know where to find you, when to find you, and that you're going to be there for them. You don't want to post on Monday one week, Friday the next week, 2 p.m. on one day, and midnight the next day. Make sure it's consistent. So same release date every single week if you're going weekly, and same time every time you release. Stay consistent.
Yeah, and for whatever reason, that's the magic and the algorithm guides and the whatever all stuff I really don't understand. So we start this podcast, and we really, our process, just to let folks know a little bit, is my responsibility is to invite the guests, because I've got the relationships in the industry, and I come up with the questions to ask, and then I do the interview. So before that, and during that, and after that is all Reed. So what, Reed? Before that, you send an introductory email to the guests and schedule using Calendly, a scheduling mechanism.
Yep. So pre-podcast, make sure that the guest is aware of the expectations of the podcast. Make sure they're aware of the questions. We try to prep them as much as possible, so when they get on the video call, the Riverside call, their video looks good and their audio sounds good already, so there's not much tinkering we have to do. And we let them know that we're here for fun, right? We try to prep them in a way that when they come on, they can provide value to our audience and that they get something out of it as well.
Yeah, and then we go through, then you're just recording in the background, and then we end, and I don't know, something happens, because next thing I know is you're posted a week or 2 later. So talk a little bit about the equipment you use, just real brief, the equipment, maybe the cost, how much it costs, and then what you do.
Yep, so Right now, we have upgraded a couple things to make it easier and higher quality. We use Riverside FM, which is what we're on right now, which is as opposed to Zoom. So Zoom would be your free option. Riverside FM's $20 a month. That allows you to create automatic short form videos and records in HD video. Then I upload these to Adobe Premiere Pro to edit, throw the music in there, cut off the pauses and the things that we want cut out, and export it. If you don't want to use Premiere Pro because it is like $30 a month, you can use Lightworks, which is a free program, or Audacity, which is also free. And then I upload that to our hosting site, which is called Podbean, which is like $9 a month. That can be free as well. There is a free option for that as well, and YouTube, which is completely free. So that is how the podcast then gets uploaded and pushed out to everybody.
Yeah, so I will explain to the audience why did we go to some of those paid versions. It's because Reed's building out his business and he's got multiple clients, so obviously you have more volume, and so you exceed the free version. And also just some nuances that I wanted as we got to doing this, that he needed in a more efficient way to do it. And for me, the $20-$30 a month was well worth the investment. So that's why we do it. But you can go almost virtually free. I mean, even to the microphones we're using, Reed, were $50 maybe.
Yours was $70 when we bought it. It's no longer $70. I know that it's like $40. The one that I use is $40. And we've gotten away with guests who use the mic that's built into their laptop.
Oh, sure.
And it all sounds pretty good.
I love that. In fact, if anybody wants to buy this used microphone for $40, I'll be more than happy to sell it to them. Oh, this is good. So it's easy. It can be very easy. Why do you want a podcast? Let's go. We touched on a little bit at the beginning. Why should a nonprofit want to podcast?
If you're looking to share your story, it is by far the easiest way to spread your story far and wide. Beyond the community, beyond the people that attend your events, podcasting allows you to spread that message over any platform that you're looking for, or that you use. If you use Facebook, that's great. You can make a week's worth of content from one podcast like we've already talked about. So that's the main takeaway, I would say, that if you're looking to spread your message, spread your story, talk about the impact you've made, podcasting is a great way to do that.
And it really, and it's easy for those of you know, one of the reasons I did it, Reed touched on it, is awareness. But as a consultant back in the day, you wrote a book to be considered an expert and get your word out. Well, I sure as heck was not going to write a book. Nothing about that appeals to me. But the thought of, all I have to do is talk, and I get to interview some really great people that I have a lot of respect for. Wow. And then from that, you can create all this other content, which Reed does for me. Just thought it was absolutely magical. And in a noisy world like it is now, Reed, and you touched on this, get your story out, such an opportunity for nonprofit organizations.
Absolutely. People's attention is being taken at the highest rate it ever has in history, and you need to be out there trying to get some attention, right? People can have many methods of what they want to spend their time doing, and if you are not trying to be part of that, then you are just missing out.
Yeah, and so your client, all of your clients that I'm thinking of are really, it's an interview style podcast. Is that your favorite? Do you think that's really effective? Easy? Why? I'm just curious. It's just worked out that way, but why?
I think it is effective because it's easy to stay consistent. Because once you get the guests scheduled, then they bring the content. You don't have to come up with it yourself. It is pretty difficult to come up with a 20, 30-minute solo episode. We've had a hard time doing that. For a while, we ended up going with 5-minute solo episodes. And even then, sometimes 5 minutes is hard to fill. So interview style, I think, is great because the guest brings the content, you ask the questions, you guys work off of each other, and boom, you got a podcast.
Yeah, that's great. The ease. And to those of you out there, and I'm thinking of somebody in particular, and she'll know exactly who I'm talking to. Initials are RF. It's, you got to do it. You have got to just do it, not talk about it. You've got to launch. So, Reed, as we're winding up this podcast, what else should the audience know about podcasting?
A few things. I would say number one, that first couple episodes that you do is going to be the hardest episodes that you record. They might also be your worst. Ours is actually ends up being our best. Our very first episode with Susie Bowie has the most downloads, and a lot of people talk about that episode still. So we hit it out of the park right off the bat, but it did take a while to get that first episode, learning how to edit, our processes down, etc. Podcasting is also not an if you build it, they will come endeavor. You have to show up for your audience every single week or every other week, whenever it is you say you're going to be there, you have to show up. Then you have to repurpose that content. There is so much out there right now that is vying for people's attention, and you have, like, if you're going to podcast, know that you might get 0 downloads one episode, but you have to keep going because it's the consistency that matters. When people trust you that you're going to be there every single week, they will come. And also another thing, don't get into this for the money, because there are going to be very, very few podcasters that are going to make a living off of the podcast. It has been great for us because it's expanded the brand identity, and that's where you'll probably find the value. You'll be able to spread your brand, your organization's message far and wide, and just so everyone knows, it takes about 1,000 downloads per week to get a sponsor. We are not even at that, and we have almost 116 episodes. So it takes a lot. So just know that you probably won't make any money directly off of the podcast itself.
Yeah, those are 3 great observations or rules of the road, if you will, understandings. And I'll just latch on to that. I view this as my marketing budget. Any cost and time expending this, I'm not putting ads in anything, but from an awareness perspective, and telling my story and just building credibility, the podcasting has really been very magical. And you've made it very easy, because otherwise I would still be reading about it, would not have launched it 2.5 years ago, and we're on the episode 116, like you said. So, ladies and gentlemen, why you ought to maybe consider podcasting, and let you know, we lifted up the tent, the kimono a little bit, show you how we do things. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode, and if you're interested in learning more about podcasting and getting any advice or tips, they can reach out to you at read@thecorleycompany.com, right?
Yes, indeedy, or DM me on LinkedIn, Reed Corley, READ Corley.
Yeah, and DM means direct message. It took me a while to figure that out. You can email or touch base with Reed on LinkedIn at READ, like read a book, Reed Corley, and that's a whole nother story and some fun we've had with his name over the years. So, Reed, thank you. I appreciate you sharing your expertise and wisdom and making me look good in the podcasting world. It is much appreciated, and thanks for being a guest on this podcast.
Thanks for having me.
All right, now go edit.